Hello, Capitalist Capthulu here. Here to talk about today the topics of human life and value. Because any civilization, it doesn't matter what civilization it is, needs to come to a consensus on the value of human life. Because if you don't, you'll just have a chaotic society. You'll have a dysfunctional society. You'll have a society that just spirals out of control. And yes, that sniffing seems to be a tick of some sort. I do it when I'm talking, apparently. So I originally wrote an article on this a while back. I argued based on scarcity, complexity, and utility, and saying that created the value of life. The problem was, it was complete bullshit. And it was that because what if we made a super complex computer, for example, that was complex, scarce, and rare? Would it have the same rights of us? Also, if there was more life in the universe, that means life would have less value, and clearly that's a bit of a dangerous idea moving forward, I think. Or maybe not. We will see in the coming years. Regardless, I don't want to make that mistake. I don't want to make this mistake to begin with. So what gives life value then? And I think it is life itself. I mean, life is the only thing that has a degree of impermanence, right? Because everything else just converts to another form of matter. Life is the only thing that can end. It's the only thing that can die. And that right there gives it a great degree of value, because it gives it impermanence. And impermanence, an end, if you will, creates an enormous amount of value. The idea of impermanence, if something went on forever, it wouldn't be as valuable as it is. Look at any TV show, for example, or any book. If it doesn't have a beginning, middle, and end, it's functionally worthless. It gets boring. Well, that's more of the writing, but it's the end that gives meaning. It's that the arc in between that gives it a degree of value. It has to have an end. Now, that's not to say that something that's immortal isn't valuable, or immortal life isn't valuable. I mean, I'm going to be fair to them. I'm going to be fair to anything that might exist. I'm not sure if it does or not, but I'm not going to be xenophobic that way. I'm going to say that the impermanence, the idea of death, gives life some of its value, but not all of its value. Because I think what's also valuable is the potential to lead a happy, fulfilling life. I think that we can experience this. We can feel those of us that are sane, those of us that aren't dangerous or mentally ill. We experience this. We experience the joys of life, the happiness in life. This creates value. I mean, we can experience this value. It's almost a consensus among people that life has value, that the joys of life and the happiness of life is worth experiencing, and we can tell, we can see that those that disagree are actually mentally ill. Now, that could be just a feature of biological programming, perhaps, so that we don't end everything. But really, who else are you going to ask? You can only ask life whether or not life has value, and they're always going to say yes. You can't ask anything else, quite frankly. Or you could. No, you can't. Sorry. And it's the reason why we're against suicide, right? But not against perhaps the concept of assisted suicide. Because one can still lead a reasonably happy and joyful life, and we want other people to experience that, right? Like, we have empathy. We want people to experience the same joys and happinesses that we have, and I think that's great. That's awesome. But when that can't happen, when that existence will only be torture and misery, I think that the idea of assisted suicide can come into debate. But the idea here isn't the ethics of that. It's that it's to show that as a society we value a happy life. We value the potential of a happy, fulfilling life, of of a happy, fulfilled life. Even now, we know how amazing life can feel, and we want others to feel that. Is it subjective? I mean, it could be. It very well could be subjective, but it's practical, right? So whether or not it's objective, whether or not it can be proven or disproven tomorrow, whether or not my logic is sound or flawed, whether or not value is because of impermanence and because of the potential for a fulfilling life, none of that matters. Well, a lot of it matters, I think. But in the end, what matters is practicality, I think. Practicality, as I've said before on the podcast, morality can only, must intersect with practicality, otherwise it's pointless. You're just a hopeless utopian at that point. Life is valuable. The concept of life having value is immensely practical. You have to have this as a society and as a person to be able to function properly. Otherwise, you could go out and kill people and rape people, and that would be fine. And that's a dangerous view to hold. You could see yourself as worthless, and that's also a horrible view to hold. You could become hopelessly nihilistic. And maybe you're right. Well, what good has it done you? What good has come from it? Now you have a chaotic society, and you're leading a hopeless, miserable existence. Is that really what we want here? So what I want, even if science proves me wrong tomorrow, I'll still believe in the practicality of the concept and therefore the importance of it. So what about animals then? Are animals and humanity the same in value, or are they different? Like, a lot of people say that humans are bad because, we go out and we kill people and we rape people, and sure we do that. Sure we do. But so do animals. The difference between us and them isn't the barbarism, it isn't the savagery, because the same can be found in the animal kingdom. We have cats torturing mice just for the heck of it. I believe tests were done and we found out that they don't even like mice. They just like hunting. They just like, the torture, the thrill. They're actually barbaric creatures. The difference between us is empathy and awareness. We can understand and empathize that this is wrong. But we don't want to torture things. We don't want to kill things. We understand that this is wrong for us. We don't want this done to us, so we don't want it done to other people. And that's what differentiates us. That is the major difference between us and animals. And for that reason, I believe sentience to be more valuable than anything else. I believe that awareness is valuable. The ability to think and feel and understand the repercussions of your actions is insanely valuable. We can progress as a species. Animals, they can only evolve, but they can't really progress. We have empathy, animals can't. We have the ability to get better. Animals don't. Animals are going to be animals. Whereas we can strive to become better human beings. We can strive to become better as a population and better as a civilization and better as a community. And we can achieve greatness never before seen. Certainly not going to be seen in the animal kingdom. So I believe a combination of these things, of sentience, our ability to become better than animals, gives us more value than animals themselves. And what about, fourth dimensional beings? Presumably, if they exist, if they can experience a deeper quality of life than us, are they more valuable then? I would say, in order to prevent this paradox from occurring, I'm saying life is more valuable because we can experience it more deeply and we can become better. Then what about the better beings than us, and what about those that can experience it deeper than us? To avoid that, I would say the non-aggression principle is practical. The idea that we should not infringe on another people's rights, another sentient being's rights. That there are certain things that we should not infringe on, because, the repercussions would be. I mean, if there are multiple dimensional beings, for example, say we say that those that can experience life the fullest and can get better and can improve the most are the most important. Well, then, what about those can do more? And then what about fourth dimensional beings? So what about fifth dimensional beings? Let's stop it all and just say non-aggression principle. Let's say don't kill anybody. Let's say that every sentient being is equally important because it's practical above all. I think it's morally right, and I think it's practical. If you disagree with rape and murder, you affirm self-ownership. What I mean is, if you own another person, then how you treat that person would be up to you. It would not up to them. It would be, if you own yourself, then you can say, hey, I don't want this. And then that's where consent comes into play. Because if you own another person, they don't get that consent. They don't get to have that consent. Whereas if you give them self-ownership, they have consent. They can actually agree or disagree to these things. And so if you disagree with rape and murder, that means you agree with the idea of consent. If you agree with the idea of consent, at least among beings that can consent, animals can't consent. I'll say that. They can't consent to anything. And that's because they're animals. They have no awareness. But human beings can consent. And we can all agree that things that harm life, if life has value, and we do things that harm life, we are abusing life, and we are degrading life, and we're making it less valuable. Well, not less valuable, but we're devaluing it. From self-ownership, we can get the right to free speech, self-defense, right to arms, right to free trade, right to free association, freedom of religion, and property rights. All enforced by the non-aggression principle, meaning you cannot initiate aggression against someone. Force should only be used in self-defense. I believe life has value, and I believe that life should be respected. I mean all forms of life. Animal life, plant life to a degree, because as I said, I view it all as valuable, and I think it all needs to be respected, and I think we need to come to a consensus as a society on the value of life. Not just that, but the value of logic as well, and the value of empathy. So we have empathy, logic, and we put these two together, and that's when we excel as a species. If we go too far to the logic, then we become cold, mechanical beings, and life has no real purpose for us. If we become too empathetic, we become cult-like. We have to pair reason with empathy. So we need to understand as a society to accept logic, but to accept empathy as well, to realize that we are emotional beings more than we are, as William said, feeling beings that think, and not thinking beings that feel. We need to understand that, and we need to place value on life, empathy, and logic, and that's the only way to move forward as a species. It's the only way to move forward as a civilization. So yeah, thank you for bearing the sniffing. And that's probably very, very annoying. But that's all for now. See you guys next time.